Well, you and I will have watched the Lionesses the weekend, and as I've said when we had a brilliant phone-in on Monday and yesterday, for the first time ever, Viv sat beside me on the sofa watching the football. So Viv and I have been together nearly 30 years, and I've been playing football my whole life, still do. I've had some great opportunities to go to games, quite posh opportunities, and I said to Viv, do you want to come? And the answer is no. Or I'm playing in a really prestigious football match, would you like to come? No. Or I'm going to watch football now, do you want to sit in the living room? No. And then she watched the whole game with me. She thought it was incredible. And I think there's this groundswell of opinion at the moment. This might be the fundamental final ingredient in the machine that is women's football, to take it forward, both in getting revenue in, but really, and the important thing is to get young girls playing football so it becomes exactly the same as young lads playing football. And we've heard, players talking about where they started, about these are the Lionesses themselves, about grassroots funding, football for girls, just opportunities to play. Listen to this. This is the FA statistics. Only 63% of schools in England offer girls football in PE lessons. And only 40%, less than half, offer girls regular after-school football. Lucy Abbott is from Wythenshawe and grew up. She was desperate to play football and wasn't allowed at school. Lucy, good afternoon.
Hi, are you okay?
I'm great. So, those two figures that I've just come up with, it wasn't even like that for you. You weren't allowed to play football. Tell me about that, Lucy. What your aspirations were, but what actually happened.
Yeah, well, I suppose the same as anyone in my generation and younger. Primary school, all the lads would be playing football in the playground and you'd want to join in. And even that was difficult because not necessarily that the teachers or dinner ladies would stop you because it's playtime, but there's still that stigma against that's not what girls do. Why are you playing with the boys? And then there was the whole tomboy situation that you'd get stereotyped because you're a tomboy, and then you'd be excluded from doing girls' things when you're quite capable of doing both.
So I played. I was going to say just very quickly, Lucy, I played football every day when I was at school. I played football my whole life, and I took it for granted that I could go in the schoolyard after dinner. We put coats down for goals, played football. If anyone had told me that I couldn't do that, or I couldn't go out of school, go home, get me tea and play football again, I'd have been absolutely devastated. What was it like for you to want to play and find that those opportunities were really restricted?
It was strange, and it was horrible. It was a horrible feeling. The one that kind of sticks most in my head was I went to Newhall Green High School, and we used to have interform at the end of every year. So each form would play each other, but they'd split the boys into one team and the girls into another, and each form would play off, and then you'd have a final and one of the forms would win. But the girls had to play netball in interform, not football. The girls were not allowed under any circumstances to play football, and I remember specifically saying how unfair it was, and that if I couldn't play football, I wasn't playing, and I ended up with a lunchtime detention because of it.
Well,
the teacher basically said, "You play netball or you play nothing."
Well, I'm going to get back to you about that in a moment, Lucy, because I want to bring Yvonne Harrison in. Yvonne is the CEO of Women in Football, and just before we reference what Lucy just said, and first of all, good afternoon to you, Yvonne. Good afternoon, Yvonne.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can,
Hello,
yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
right, brilliant.
I thought you disappeared then. So
No.
when you hear that 63% offer football for girls in school and less than half of schools, 40%, offer girls a regular after-school football opportunity, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it makes me sad because ultimately every young boy and girl should have the opportunity to experience all kinds of sports, particularly when we think of the popularity of football. Because, not everybody is going to continue to play. People will try something, they don't like it. They might try netball, they might try hockey, they might try football, they might try cricket. In school, it's about exposure to different opportunities for young people. And ultimately, so long as young people are active and enjoy being active and having fun with their friends, that's the most important thing to me. But the fact that, it's almost a given, and you talked about it just then, if somebody had said to me, I can't play, I'd have been fuming, I'd have been so angry, I'd have been upset. That's been the norm, and that's been acceptable and tolerated in society. That, and it's not just football, there's a whole range of things where women have been less equal, and, thankfully these things are changing. The FA put a huge amount into the legacy plan for the Euros way back in 2017, before it's obviously, it's not something that's an afterthought, and obviously they're looking to change that, and rightly so.
Do you think that, how much do you think what happened at the weekend, and it did seem to be an absolute sea change, will help girls and women in football going forward?
I think it's really significant. If we look at sort of the past 12 months, women's football's been on a real growth trajectory anyway. The Barclays Women's Super League, the Championship, the deal with the BBC and Sky, so that, women's football is more visible on the telly, particularly free to view, is really, really important. So we were already on a very positive kind of chart, if you like, and the Euros has just accelerated it, and then some. I mean, the way that everybody has got behind the Lionesses, but actually the standard of the football from all of the teams, the crowds, record-breaking crowds, biggest women's sporting event in history. Look at Trafalgar Square, all of the people turning up. It's phenomenal, and it's made heroes of the Lionesses, and it's helped, young girls and boys look up to them and admire them. My son is absolutely, been buzzing about the whole thing. He's loved it. He's the Russo nutmeg goal. He was like, oh my God, Mom, that's amazing. And so it's not just young girls that are being inspired by this, it's young boys as well. And I think when we go back to the point that was made earlier about not being able to play and, getting a detention, I think the fact now that, this is going to be normal for young girls and boys, hopefully in years to come, it's not going to be a strange thing that girls are playing football, and girls aren't going to be looked down upon or judged because they want to play what was perceived as a men's sport.
Well, let's bring Lucy back in with that, because I talked about, I just took it for granted. I played on Monday. I just take it for granted that I can play football. What did you actually do, Lucy, to get some sort of games in when there was all this resistance? How did you manage to get a game of football?
So it was basically, we'd have to round as many girls up that were willing to play and approach the teachers and say, we all want to play. It's not just because they'd always come back as well with, oh, there's not enough of you. We can't get a team together because there isn't enough of you. But it's like, well, if you actually put it out there and asked people, there would be a lot more people willing to give it a go. And I know Yvonne touched on there about, boys as well getting into football. I think if you put things out there for people of all ages, all abilities, whatever sex you are, whatever religion you are, whatever race you are, if it's out there and people are aware of it, then they're going to join in. They're going to attempt it. They're going to be, they might not like it, but if they've got the opportunity to at least try it, then, things would be completely different.
And let me just finally with you, Yvonne, it was an amazing weekend, but we've had false dawns in the past with women's football. However, I suspect that this might well be a real dawn. What's your thoughts about the effects, the after effects of the weekend, and where you see women's football now going on?
My thoughts are it can only be good for the game, but not only for women's football, for women's sport. Women's football isn't the only sport where there's inequality, so I think that's amazing. I think we're seeing a sway of commercial interest in the game, both with players and leagues and things like that, which is really important, because domestically, even though England has the most competitive professional women's football league in the world, actually some of those players in the Championship in particular, you know, they're not earning enough money to survive. They're having to get part-time jobs. So we can't pretend that everything is rosy and that, that there's millions and millions of pounds in women's football, because it's not there yet. But the fact that there's more interest and more visibility, commercial brands want, they want bums on seats, they want atmospheric stadiums, they want interest, they want visibility. We've got through the TV. The media have been fantastic, sort of the back end of the tournament and certainly post-tournament. You know, it's been very, very busy and it's amazing. But the reality is there's still much, much more to do. We've got to keep it visible, and we've got to be realistic in terms of the challenges ahead, not only for players wanting to come through, for accessibility of opportunities in schools, in community clubs, in community settings. The player pathway, you know, these emerging talent centres that the FA has talked about are really important, because lots of young people, talented young people, can't access current provision because it's too far away. So there's a long way to go, but my goodness, let's ride the wave. It's just been phenomenal.
Yvonne, it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Cheers. Yvonne Harrison's the CEO of Women in Football, and we were also talking to Lucy Abbott. Lucy plays for Happy Sundays FC. Lucy, when does your season start?
Well, it's not actually like a season. It's not like a league football now. So Happy Sundays was created by a guy from Wythenshawe called Joe Farrer, just basically to give people the chance and opportunity to play football without having to sign up to a league.
When's your next game?
Get the exposure. Well, again, I'm not too sure. We played our first mixed friendly on Sunday, so the men and women's team played together, which was a first for us, but it was very successful, so I think we're hoping we can do that again. But again, due to funding, pitch availability, things like that, you know, it is a daily battle trying to get games still.
Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me anyway, Lucy. You take care.
Yeah, you too.
Cheers, thank you. Lucy Abbott from Wythenshawe and Yvonne Harrison from Women in Football.